Morning, team, and welcome back to part two of my Ukraine war news update for the 19th of July 2023. Let's go to the front line, just a general synopsis of what's going on. Again, all the expected claims of fog of war, information blackouts, difficult to get timely, accurate information, and all that kind of stuff. Right, we're going to go first of all to Belgorod actually, and let's look to see where that is. So this is Belgorod up here. So in just over the border in Belgorod, Chechen forces. So this is Ichkeria, isn't it? Republic of Ichkeria, Chechnya. Basically, Chechen forces fighting for the Ukrainians ambush a Russian logistical vehicle. So here it is, and they basically take out that truck there. The video was published by Ukraine's Intel. Location is unknown. The Dzhokhar Dudiev Chechen battalion has been fighting for Ukraine since the beginning of the war. Now, this is, well, actually, it has been located to there. I don't know how accurate that location is. Ukrainian forces from a Chechen unit ambushed and destroyed an assault group of Russian forces, along with the military vehicle near the border town of Sareda. I don't know the accuracy of taking out the assault group, or whether that was just a logistics truck. But I think this is quite interesting because someone is asking me what's happening about the Russian volunteer battalions. Why have they not been heard of for the last few weeks? And this is just a theory, but was it on Ukraine the latest they were talking about this? That it might be that Americans, so the Americans and Polish were pretty annoyed. The Americans and Poles were pretty annoyed that during those attacks you could clearly see Western equipment being used. And the proviso for giving a lot of equipment to Ukraine is that it can't be used in Russian territory. And then there they were using loads of this stuff literally in, like driving into Russia and attacking Russia with this provided equipment. And I don't know if the Ukrainians got a rap on the knuckles after that, and we have subsequently not seen those people being active. And now we're seeing a different group of people being active using their own kind of small arms, firearms, and whatnot to do an ambush there. And it kind of, and it fit in apparently with a number of other things that it could be that suddenly, you know, y- the Russian volunteer forces are not as prevalent as they were previously. Um, anyway, it's interesting that has happened, and it's happened as a result of Chechen fighters, pro-Ukrainian Chechen fighters. Right, the offensive of the Russians on the Kupiansk direction has been unsuccessful, says Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Hanna Malia. Fighting continues, but the initiative is on the Ukrainian side. There was an advance on Ukrainian soldiers around Bakhmut as well, is the claim. Now, just to let you know, up in Kupiansk, where all this area was taken just to the east of the Oskil River, again, Andrew Perpetua saying in his live stream that was all grey zone. It's forest area. It's been flattened. We'll go through this in my frontline update in a little bit more detail, but it's basically not going into Ukrainian controlled land, but just taking up control of the grey zone. And he was saying even then it's unclear whether they actually control that. But I don't know that isn't just spinning things as positively as possible, but it's understanding actually what the local geography is up there, and actually how they can't really advance to the west, and it's just eating up grey zone, as I say again. So Russian assault in the Kupiansk direction is halted. Initiative is on the Ukrainian side. So that's just repeating Hanna Malia's claims there. And then we sort of come down to Bakhmut. I haven't heard too much about, say, Novosibirsk or Karmazianivka. Karmazianivka, which is the area, just see if we can show it on here. It's around about there where there's a bit of gain for the Russians, or it might even be there. They basically went across the Zherebets River. Actually, this is Zherebets River, so it's going to be around about there. They went across the Zherebets River and took a small forest and then the next forest bit is separated by just a small kind of passageway, is controlled by the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians tried to counterattack and it failed, but they're basically just camped in these two little bits of forest. I don't think it's the end of the world, but it is. It will be frustrating for the Ukrainians that the Russians have got across the Zherebets River in that particular area. Right, but again, more details to follow. Situation south of Bakhmut, the Ukrainians have advanced into the forest strip southwest of Klishivka. I mean, there's a lot of talk about these forest strips, about how I thought they already controlled them, type thing, and now they're advancing into them. And while separately advancing towards Andriivka, the extent so Andriivka is to the south, so it does look like the Ukrainians are really pushing the Russians back between Klishivka and Kodiamivka in these fields, as I talked about previously. If they can take Andriivka, then that would start, leading to Klishivka being somewhat operationally encircled. The extent of this advance cannot be clarified yet, but there are reports that the AFU has progressed far into both tree lines. So that's around here, but I don't think that changes any kind of mapping. It might just be that their consolidation is now more robust in the sort of grey zone, so they're controlling parts of the grey zone. In the Bakhmut direction, quote, Ukrainian troops are conducting offensive actions north and south of the city of Bakhmut. Also, during hostilities, Russians were forced to retreat from their positions northeast of Orikovo-Vasilivka, says Kovalev, spokesperson. So Orikovo-Vasilivka is to the north of Bakhmut and next to the highway. So it could be that they are advancing slightly down the highway, the main supply route into the north of Bakhmut there. So Bakhmut is still seems to be the area where there's just this consistent incremental progress each day, which is actually what Hannah Malia said yesterday, and that's what gives the Russians something to worry about. It's just the consistent, positive news for the Ukrainians out of Bakhmut. So trying to divert their attention away from there to try and slow that down. Russia has advanced towards the Ukraine-held town of Krasnohorivka. That's in the Donetsk Oblast north of Mariinka. 2 square kilometers has been added to the occupied status. So there's lots of footage out about this. So more footage from the attack near Krasnohorivka mine. The attack was repulsed by the 79th Air Assault Brigade. So he's claiming that the attack was repulsed. Here we've got troops possibly returning back towards the Russian lines, and lots of explosions, lots of blown up stuff, so on and so forth. So this is the mine. There's some really quite impressive footage out about this. Lots of extended footage, just to let you know that this was a significant attack. So you can see, like, I don't know, it's a bit dark there, but at least 4 bits of mechanized equipment there, and there were several lines of equipment. There's a mine clearer that had cleared a single line all the way down to this mine, and then was lost at the mine, and then all these vehicles went down there, but then they were kind of hammered. And I think the Russians lost maybe 4 tanks and a number of infantry fighting vehicles, but they did get into the mine, and I don't know whether they still have control of the mine or not. Reporting from Ukraine did a video on this. They kind of surmised that the Russians did take control of the mine, but at a huge cost. Let's talk about 60 casualties or so out of, say, 120 soldiers, I think, that were sort of counted. I don't know how accurate that is, but if you're losing 50% of your forces in attacking a place, then that is a massive cost to take that. And this is, as I say, this is a mine on the way to Krasnohorivka. It might signify, I think it's just about there. It might signify, really good territorial gain for the Russians, but as I say, at what cost? Is it worth it? I don't know. We shall see. But that's what the Russians do. It's like, we take territory, we lose troops, and we quite often lose a lot of troops in taking that territory. But that's fine by us because, hey, we've got loads of people. I don't know. That's too simplistic. Right. Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar talked about the front in the south. Offensive actions continue in the Berdyansk and Melitopol areas on the directions of Malotokmachka and Nova Pokrovka and Velika Novoselka Uruzhany. Our defenders were successful. They are taking hold of the reached boundaries. The initiative is on our side. The enemy's task is to stop our advance, and they put a lot of effort into it. Our enemy is strong. Therefore, our troops have to move in extremely difficult conditions. In addition, it is necessary to create certain conditions for further promotion, and it takes time. Remember the liberation of Kherson? It was also more than one day. Oh, that's a bit pointed. Remember that? Yeah, that also took more than one day. So don't expect miracles. But still, I think there is an understanding that this is tough, right? And it will take possibly a lot longer. There are people now openly talking about, yeah, the main offensive might not happen until 2024. Wow, that's a real shift in narrative going on there. And that may well be the case. You adapt. The only reason that people really want success to happen as quickly as possible is to maintain support for Ukraine. And this is all about the geopolitical situation rather than the tactical, operational, strategic situation. Unless you include the geopolitical scenario in with the strategic there. So there's still, and I know lots of Americans say this, you shouldn't worry about this. There is bipartisan support, but irrespective of that, there are lots of analysts saying the American election is a worry. And they want to get things out of the way because it's an unknown, right? You're doing operations here that require you to know about certain things and there to be consistency going forward. And what you want is consistency of support from the US administration. And you can't guarantee that, though it might be likely, it is still a worry for the Ukrainians. And every analyst I've listened to talks about this. So whether Americans are like, yeah, don't worry about it, yeah, fine. You might be certain that support for Ukraine will continue, but not everyone else is. And there are a lot of jittery feelings about what might take place in the 2024 US elections, and then other elections around the world as well. So if you can't guarantee a solid foundation of support going forward, although it might be very likely, the longer this goes on, the more that will move to the back burner just naturally. Then that puts these constraints and this pressure on Ukraine succeeding as quickly as possible. But ideally, Ukraine needs to take as long as it takes to do this as well as they can. And so you've got that tension of like, yeah, you need to have got this done by autumn, and sewn up, and you need to be knocking on the door of Crimea. Now you have people like General Ben Hodges talking a lot about how by the end of the summer they'll be in Crimea. Hey, that ain't going to happen. But it's about managing expectations and what is realistic, and continuing to support Ukraine, obviously in their efforts. Right, so that is not too much information coming out about the south. I don't know whether there are rotations, as I was talking about. Andrew Perpetua talking about his mapping about there's a lot of chaos going on. In certain areas there are counterattacks from Russia. Certain areas like Russia may not have counterattacked; they're just further forward than we thought they were. As exactly what I was talking about yesterday with regard to his mapping, and he was talking about that last night in his live stream. So there are, sure, there's just heavy fighting still going on, but the Russians are defending by counterattacking in a number of places, and that seems to be how they're doing things. Right, military aid must rush on. So preparation for practical training of Ukrainian pilots on F-16 fighter jets was the main topics of the Ramstein meeting, said the head of the Pentagon. So a lot of talk, a lot of sorting out the details of that, I'm sure. We'll continue to provide Ukraine with additional Bradley fighting vehicles, Strikers, and artillery systems. Our work continues, Lloyd Austin said. So this is and I think this is a really good message to Russia, which is, you may shout about. So every time there's a Bradley on a field, the Russians go, "We've got to destroy it. We've got to destroy it," and they love shouting about Bradleys getting destroyed. The US has a lot of Bradleys and a lot of Strikers. And so I think it's really important if they say, yeah, we'll continue giving you Bradleys and Strikers. Yeah, that's not a problem type thing. That kind of just damps. I love that kind of rhetoric. Yeah, we'll continue to provide Ukraine with additional Bradley fighting vehicles, Strikers, and artillery systems. Our work continues. Yeah, right. But mainly we're talking about F-16s type thing. That's how I see this, and it's just like Russians go, "Yeah, we taken out Bradley. Yeah, we taken out 3 Bradleys." And they're like, "Yeah, we'll give you some more Bradleys. No worries." I don't know if that's how it plays out, but that's how I see it, and I think that's important. Right, there's been a lot of talk from British uh, followers of this war. I've seen this on my threads a number of times about Jordan, because Jordan have a whole load of challenges that could be used to bolster the Ukrainian defense, Ukrainian mechanized brigades. A lot of Challenger ones don't they have that can be done up. Jordan sold its ex-Dutch Cheetah, so these are the Gepards, Spags to the US, and has also provided missiles for Ukraine's Soviet-type SAM launchers via the US and or another party. So that's interesting. But also we see this, and this video did a bit of a round yesterday, and it's unsure as to what it is. So this Ukrainian actually mentions it as being a challenger, like a Challenger One, but no report says Roman Bochkala reports it as a Challenger 1, but it's the predecessor Chieftain main battle tank. So this is a much older UK tank, reportedly undergoing repair and modernisation before being sent to Ukraine. Jordan has a couple of hundred of them, modified FV40-32s in storage, might be bought back by the UK or Rheinmetall. I'd love for Ukraine to get hold of a whole load of Challenger ones. That would be really good. But here, what Trentelenko was saying that was interesting about this is this whatever it is, this mechanized thing that's helping to do the work on the tank. He says therein just is concentrating on the little things. Ukrainians had the use of stuff like this. The Russians generally don't. Says this is really like this tells you a lot. uh, I mean, he knows logistics and that kind of stuff more than I do, obviously. But he was like quite excited that Ukrainians are just using what you'd imagine to be used in many countries in the world, and that's something that Russians don't. Okay, Ukrainian border guards have completed a 5-week basic military training course in Spain. This stuff is going on all the time, and it's really good. It's giving the training to the Ukrainians that appears to be better training than the Russians are getting, and that presents a competitive advantage and an asymmetry. Spanish military personnel instructed the soldiers on how to provide first aid in combat actions and enhance their battlefield skills, according to the Ukraine State Border Guard Service. Danish drones help Ukrainian sappers detect explosive devices. These drones, and I talked about these are 6 drones that Danes have given them. And you think, well, 6 drones? I mean, they're getting thousands of drones from elsewhere. No, these are like really good drones. And these drones are capable of detecting any metal objects at a depth of up to 3 meters, making it possible to scan areas remotely without endangering the lives of deminers. This is going to be the future of demining, I think. How close they can get these to the front line, though, is another question. So these might be being used much further back in kind of more of a humanitarian way. I don't know. The EU will propose a dedicated fund to help to keep Ukraine's military stocked for the next 4 years at a cost of up to 20 billion euros, according to 5 diplomats familiar with the plan. This is what it's all about. It's about long-term sustainable support for Ukraine. A new military aid package for Ukraine worth roughly $1.3 billion is expected to be announced by the US in the coming days, with the package expected to include Vampire anti-drone missile systems, as well as additional Switchblade 300 and 600s and Phoenix Ghost kamikaze attack drones. So these Switchblades they've not been as people when they were first announced, like right back at the beginning of the war. I was like, yeah, he's going to be amazing. I don't think they have been particularly amazing. 300s, someone was saying the other day, a user was saying, yeah, they're all right. Uh, you know, but I think you can get cheaper, more effective drones by taking first-person view drones and whacking an RPG-7 on it, which they've got tens of thousands of those, like RPG-7 warheads. So whack them on a racing drone, and you've got a much more effective uh, piece of kit than a Switchblade 300. The 600s are larger and can be used to take out armor. That's going to be more useful, I think, personally. Right. According to Reuters, what will be transferred, as mentioned, the ones already stated, but also Australian Drone Shield, anti-drone systems, radar sensors, and analytical systems and ammo as well. But it's not. I don't think it's been fully properly announced yet. US aid to provide $250 million to support agricultural sector, said the US Ambassador Bridget Brink. The US aid have helped in Odessa, actually, sort of getting them able to use power once infrastructure's hit. So these hits last night on Odessa, hopefully, if they've got generators that can provide backup power, then that is great, and it is a workaround, and that's been helped put in place by USAID. Earlier, Russia had announced a suspension of the Black Sea grain agreement signed in 2022 to unblock the export of Ukrainian grain. Yep. Benelux, so that's Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, have announced a joint statement on July the 18th that their countries will soon send Ukraine refurbished M113 armored vehicles. And I think they have the M113s, these are old, but they are essential at the front. They are used to carry wounded Ukrainian troops from zero line to yellow zone, as are Bradleys, keeping them coming in Belgium and USA. Lavrov is trying to stir up the far right in Belgium too. This is everyone's war. I think there was some talk about them having some kit on top of them, some of these as well, maybe some kind of weaponry on top, but I can't remember. So Russian going over to the Russian provision, and I know this looks like everything's completely skewed, but Russia just aren't being provided equipment by foreign entities, so it's very difficult for me to say. And Russia's been provided, in the same way that I do with the Ukrainians, because they're not. They're just not. So therefore, they're having to make their own stuff, but they don't have the ability because of sanctions to do that particularly well. So here, Dmitry from War translated, and this is translating from a Russian source. Russian anti-aircraft artillery unit received 6 Tunguska air defense vehicles from the MOD, likely from long conservation followed by major repairs. As a result, all 6 vehicles are dysfunctional. In the full version of the video, the reporter states that upon reception, 3 vehicles were running, but after a 30-kilometer march, all broke down with major suspension problems. Another 2 suffered from armament control system malfunctions, and a 6th is too dangerous to even start. So none of the 6 that have been provided as replacements air defense systems work, and then none of the 6 transport reloading vehicles TZM were functional either. Just wow. Is that representative? I don't know. Could well be. And if so, then Russia are in trouble. Okay, going on to geopolitical stuff. Saudi Arabia and Turkey are in secret negotiations with Ukraine and the Russian Federation to return Ukrainian children stolen by Russia, says the Financial Times. Let's have a quick dip into that article then. So here we have secret talks to return Ukrainian children taken by Russia. Saudi Arabia and Turkey are seeking to broker a deal to repatriate Ukrainian children taken to Russia and held in children's homes or adopted by Russian families, according to 4 people familiar with the talks. It does include former Chelsea Football Club owner Roman Abramovich, who's someone who was involved in negotiations earlier in the conflict, but has also been heavily sanctioned as an oligarch by the UK government. The need for mediators highlights the complexity of repatriating the relocated Ukrainian children, an issue that led the International Criminal Court to charge Putin with war crimes in March, along with the Children's Rights Commissioner Maria Lvova-Belova. The issue is so contentious that Ukrainian and Russian officials have refused to speak to each other directly, unlike for some past prisoner swaps or ceasefire negotiations. So this is, people getting involved. Ukraine alleges Russia arranged the abductions of as many as 20,000 children with the explicit intent of erasing their Ukrainian identity. Yale's humanitarian lab says at least 6,000 children have been removed from Ukraine to Russia, while Russia's official figures count fewer still. Ukraine Latest had an interesting segment on their podcast yesterday that was talking about this, or possibly the day before, last couple of days. Well worth looking into. Neither side has kept centralized records of how many Ukrainian children have been relocated to Russia, while the differing circumstances in which they were taken make drawing up a full tally of working out where to send them difficult, the people said. So on and so forth. This is such a horrible... I mean, the stealing of children's horrible. It's a war crime. But add on to that these massive filtration camps where you've got adults as well filtered through and taken to different areas of the Russian Federation in order to be kind of assimilated into the Russian Empire. It's so controversial. Right, moving on. Arresting Vladimir Putin. So this is on account of those war crimes that we just talked about. He has got an arrest warrant on his head from the ICC, International Criminal Court, and he's going to have a BRICS meeting in Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, in South Africa. And the South Africans have said they would arrest him, but they're still kind of working it out a little bit. Arresting Vladimir Putin would amount to a declaration of war on Russia, says the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in court papers released today, as the country wrangles over hosting the Russian leader during a BRICS summit. I mean, this is a real dilemma for them, because on the one hand, they want to be they want increased power and prosperity, and they see that through BRICS, right? Obviously, we've got China on board, and one of the world's biggest producers of hydrocarbons. Then you can maybe see that's a future you might want to take. But then you're also signed up to the International Criminal Court, and you're obliged to arrest the leader of one of those nations when he comes in. And there's your issue. How do you solve that? They've asked him not to turn up and asked Sergei Lavrov to come instead, his foreign minister, and he's refused. He's refused that. So this is Russia pushing the envelope. Now, Russia, if Putin goes and judges that you won't be arrested, then that is really showing to South Africa and the rest of the world how powerful he is. That I can go to a country that's supposed to arrest me and they won't even arrest me. So this is a really important it's a really important event happening soon. And if he does go and doesn't get arrested, that is basically urinating on the ICC and international rules-based behavior. Yeah. On the other hand, I mean, this is great. Today it is Ukraine, but tomorrow it could be any of us. This is Chilean President Gabriel Boric with an impassioned speech at the EU CELAC summit in Brussels today. So this is a summit where, now who is he? I was just looking into him actually. He's only 35. He's become the youngest president ever elected in Chile and set the record for receiving the highest number of votes in Chilean history. Turnout, either way, it's quite interesting. He's a leftist leader, and I think that's good. I think you've got other leftist leaders like Lula in Brazil who are a bit kind of trying to straddle the fence. And again, you can understand because they're in BRICS as well. When you sign up to things like BRICS, then you are going to be in a little bit of a dilemma. You've got a horrific war going on, and you're in a formal agreement with the perpetrator of that horrific war. So you've got a leftist leader there but then the rightist leader, Bolsonaro, was a massive friend of Putin. And so, either left or right, kind of. But anyway, when you've got a leftist leader in South America being really, really robust and impassioned in supporting Ukraine, that is really, really good. Long may that continue. So I'll probably go through this speech later in my extra because I think that's worth dwelling on. Right, Turkish officials are reported to have notified the Ukrainian government that they will not provide escorts and/or protection for commercial ships that are attempting to export grain from ports on the Black Sea due to the risks associated with escalating the conflict with Russia. However, it was further stated that they are continuing to focus on bringing Russia back to the Black Sea grain deal, and negotiations between Turkish President Erdogan and Russian President Putin expected to take place next month in August. The Ukrainian ambassador to Turkey stated that they are now hoping to come to some sort of agreement with Bulgaria and Romania. So those are nations that are allowed to get their military ships through the Bosphorus Straits because they also border the Black Sea, but they are not at war, so they can do that. Ukraine are hoping to get agreement with one of those or both of those nations that will allow Ukrainian commercial ships to use their territorial waters in order to create a safe shipping lane for the export of grain out of the Black Sea. So we'll see how that turns out. I mean, that would be pretty ballsy for Bulgaria and Romania to do that, especially as NATO nations too. So, yeah, Croatia offers its railway network and ports in the Adriatic Sea for the transportation of Ukrainian food by alternative routes due to Russia's blocking of the grain agreement. State Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Croatia, Frano Matusic, shared. So that's good news. And there we come to the end of my news, part two of my news piece. It's been a long one today. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.